Never Alone, a story of friendship, faith, and second chances. Elias had never meant for the house to grow so quiet. It happened slowly, the way dust settles on a bookshelf, unnoticed, until one day the sunlight hits it just right. He still kept the same routine, coffee at 6 in the same chair by the window as he read the scriptures. But the silence had begun to feel like an unwanted presence in the room, one that watched him more closely than he liked. He didn't tell anybody he was lonely. There wasn't really anyone to tell. So when he'd driven into town for groceries and a new light bulb for the living room lamp, he hadn't planned on the extra stop. But when he passed the small brick building with the faded blue sign, County Animal Rescue, something tugged at him. The shelter was an impulse. He'd driven past it 100 times. But that morning, he turned in without thinking. The lobby smelled faintly of disinfectant and dog treats. Before he could talk himself out of it, a tired volunteer with kind eyes and a glint of hope in her voice asked if he was looking for a friend. "I'm not sure," Elias said. "Maybe?" He hesitated. He didn't want to say that he was lonely, that the house was too quiet, that there was no one to notice him when he walked into a room or missed him when he left. Her smile softened. "We have a lot of dogs to choose from. I can show you some of the most adoptable ones. Any of them will make a great best friend." He nodded and followed her down a long corridor filled with kennels. The volunteer had been right. They were full. No wonder she looked tired and hopeful with his arrival. First, she showed him a beagle named Pepper. Sweet but loud, she paced the kennel, whining, tail tucked. Elias crouched down, offering his hand. Pepper sniffed it, then turned away. "She needs a home with someone who can give her a job," the volunteer said gently. Elias nodded. "She's lovely, just not the right match." Next was a terrier with bright eyes and a bark that could rattle windows. Energetic, spirited, a little whirlwind of fur. Elias smiled despite himself. "He'd run circles around me." "I keep hearing that," the volunteer laughed. They moved on. There were shepherds and huskies and mixes of them, small terriers and even a full-blooded dachshund. There was a beautiful spaniel, but she didn't pay him any attention with the volunteer around. With each kennel, a small weight settled heavier in his chest. Maybe he'd been foolish to come. Maybe he wasn't meant to have a dog. Maybe the quiet was just life. The volunteer turned to him. "Tell me what you're hoping for." "A calm one. Older, maybe," he replied. Her smile brightened. "We have a few seniors. They have been here for a while. But there is nothing wrong with them. Most people just want a puppy. Let me show you. I know exactly who you should meet." Jonah was 12 with a graying muzzle and a tail that wagged in slow, thoughtful arcs. He didn't bark or jump or spin. He simply lifted his head and looked at Elias like he had been expecting him. Something in Elias's chest shifted. "Can I meet him?" he asked. "Sure," the volunteer replied, and then led Elias into the visiting room. Jonah walked over slowly, his gait stiff but steady. He sniffed Elias's hand, then leaned his head gently against his knee, just resting. Elias swallowed. "Well, hello there." He sat down in a comfy chair in the room designed to mimic a family room. Jonah sighed, a deep, contented sound, and settled beside him. The volunteer watched. He's a retriever mix, surrendered when his owner moved into an assisted living. He's been waiting for someone who wants a slower pace. Elias ran a hand over Jonah's back, feeling the warmth beneath the thinning fur. "He seems peaceful." "He is," the volunteer added. "He just wants someone to sit with." Elias swallowed. "Me too." He looked down at Jonah. Jonah looked up at him. And that was it. "I'll take him." The first week was an adjustment. Jonah moved slowly, and Elias found himself adjusting his own rhythm to match. His morning walks were shorter, and his evenings became earlier. And Jonah felt his way around, slowly but surely, until eventually Jonah fit into the house the way a warm blanket fits over cold knees. Quietly, naturally, without asking for anything. He followed Elias from room to room, a steady, loyal companion. When Elias read in the evenings, Jonah rested his chin on his foot. When Elias washed dishes, Jonah lay nearby, sighing in that old dog way that sounded like contentment. The house felt inhabited again. One evening, rain tapped softly against the windows. Elias sat in his chair with a book open but unread. The loneliness crept in the way it sometimes did. Jonah lifted his head, sensing the shift, and walked over to rest it on Elias's knee. "You're a good boy," Elias murmured, scratching behind his ears. "A very good boy." His hand drifted to the small table beside him, where a worn Bible sat. The pages fell open to a verse he had underlined years ago. He didn't read it out loud, but the words settled into him like a warm light. "I will never leave you nor forsake you." Jonah nudged his hand again, as if agreeing. Elias let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. "I know," he whispered. "We're not alone anymore." As the weeks passed on, Jonah developed favorite spots, like the rug by the window, with the patch of sunlight streaming inside, and had settled into a routine of a slow morning walk, an afternoon nap, and resting his head on Elias's foot in the quiet of the evening. And Elias found himself talking again, comments about the weather, the book he was reading, or the ingredients in supper. And Jonah listened the way only old dogs do. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the house held a golden glow, Elias looked down at Jonah and felt something settle in his chest. He reached down and stroked Jonah's fur. "You're a good boy indeed," he murmured. Jonah thumped his tail once, slow and sure, knowing he had found his home, and Elias had found his comfort. Together in that quiet room, with the soft light and the steady breathing of an old dog at his feet, Elias felt the truth of that verse again. He was not forgotten nor forsaken. And he certainly was not alone.